Welcome to the Six Figure Business Mastery Podcast, where every week, Kirsten and Jeanne dive into the essential topics to fuel your business growth. From copywriting to course creation, mindset to video marketing, they've got you covered. Tune in for expert guest interviews on all things marketing and business, and learn how to work on your business, not just in it. So, get ready to unlock your business potential and take it to the next level.
Welcome, everyone, to our newest episode. Thanks for being here and listening to our podcast. And our special guest today, her name is Jess Ellett, and her company is River City Consulting. She's going to talk to us today about branding. So welcome, Jess. It's lovely to have you. Tell us a little bit about your company and what you do.
It's River City Consulting. My husband actually started our ad agency about 21 years ago. His background was heavy in graphic design, and that eventually 15 years ago translated into a lot of website design. And then we also started a podcast 3 years ago. So we are doing all things branding, marketing, and design.
Because you just have to evolve in business, don't you? Especially in marketing.
Now it's completely niched down where people are actually going to school for marketing and specifically getting social media degrees, which is unfortunate because there's such a big, broad picture. And when you hone in that tight, it really does limit your knowledge and what you can do in the future.
So today we're going to talk about building your brand on a budget. So everybody likes to make sure that they're cutting costs, and it's a new year. So we want to make sure we're spending our time and money on things that make sense for our business. Let's talk a little bit about the starting point, which is, I believe, that you need to design and define your kind of unique authenticity to your brand. So can you talk a little bit about that?
We do specialize in working with small businesses. We also work with bigger ones where they need to do a full rebrand and that kind of thing. But our specialty and the ones we love the most are definitely the small businesses, because we can feel the impact directly, and it just matters so much more than a corporate entity. So with small businesses, obviously budget is very limited. And a lot of times, let's take, for example, a plumber or somebody that does HVAC. Their background is totally the opposite of marketing. So they're launching this company, but that piece of the puzzle they really don't have. And so when we come in, we do define sort of three essential things that will help them get off the ground. The first is defining that unique and authentic brand identity, which sounds like a lot of big words. It's figuring out how to clarify, first of all, what is your mission? What are your values? Because those are the things that are going to really lead kind of the voice that you have in this whole situation of marketing. And then once you have that mission, that value statement, then it's really figuring out the look and the feel. And that comes down to your website, your logo, your fonts, all of your visual elements. A big mistake that people make when they're starting out like this is that they maybe have a teenager come and handle the marketing, and they're putting things out that have a stretched out logo and the wrong font. And imagine a company like McDonald's, and it really does help to create that consistency across the board. So figuring out what that message is going to look and feel like, and that voice. Do you want to have a voice that is very serious? But if you're a spa, maybe you want to have fun and humor. Whatever that voice is, it's important to establish it and then make sure it carries through really in everything you do.
I follow Denise Duffield Thomas, who always talks about some people spend all their time procrastinating because they just keep tweaking it and thinking that this is moving them forward, when in fact, it's just wasting time. If they don't know what they want or they don't have it yet, they need to go see someone who can say, no, this is the way we'll be.
Speaking on that, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking when they start a business that they need to say everything, whether it's in their rack cards or on their website. They just want to have so much information, and people really don't engage that way. So you think that you're really giving them everything, but really you end up giving them nothing because they turn away. And so bite-sized pieces of information that are digestible, that's the biggest battle we fight with people, is to take that long paragraph you want on your homepage and turn it into little bite-sized pieces. Unfortunately, that's where we are as a civilization. We can't intake big amounts of information. We've been trained now to just take bite-sized ones. And you don't want to fight that as somebody who's trying to build a business.
Yeah. And I would say, to add on to that, it's The visuals are so important because an image can convey what you want to say instead of actually writing it out. There's lots of tricks that you can do design wise to get across what you want to get across.
And that's why it is important, if you don't have an extensive background in that, to work with somebody that does, because even colors represent certain things. If you're more in the medical or you're more in home improvement, whatever your business does, there are colors that innately affect people emotionally, and you want to affect them the right way with the right colors based on what you do.
You sit down with them and talk to them about that.
Our first step is always going to be that call to really understand where they're at in the process, whether they need help with that, whether they just maybe have an idea but need it honed in a little bit. Everybody's at a different place, really. So figuring out that is our first step. And then based on that, we go into our next steps depending on what their needs are. We tend to be very flexible in how we work with our new businesses. Other people need to do it in piecemeal because they don't have an unlimited budget. They don't have an investor pouring money in. So we need to also figure out the priority of how we're going to do things based on what is most important for getting off the ground, and then maybe come up with even a 12-month plan that we do in steps to get them there by the end of the first year.
So I'm thinking, like you said, you work with some clients, you start from scratch and you work all the way to the end, and with others, you just come in where they need you.
And we'll work with a lot of companies that maybe started out as just a one-person solopreneur, as they call it, and maybe they did a DIY website because they just needed to get something up. Those sites are great to get off the ground, but they don't tend to be as recognized by Google. So once they start growing, they're not getting served the way that they should be. And so they might need to move that to a different platform. They might need to have everything recoded as far as the headlines and the images that they have. It may be just that we have to take them from where they started and move them to that next level. Or it may be that they're just starting from scratch. Or as I said, it may be that they did everything 10 years ago and it's time to really do a deep rebrand.
A brand can evolve. It doesn't have to be, get something, especially if you're just starting out, get something you like. It doesn't have to be something that you're loving, that you're passionate about, that's going to stand for you for the next 100 years. You will evolve, your business will evolve, your website will evolve. I think that was hard when I was working with clients as well.
It's always a sign to the community, to your target audience. It's a sign that things are going well when you do a rebrand. It is not a negative. It's a sign that you've really come to a place where you're pivoting and you're growing and you're successful, and people really respond well to that. So as long as that rebrand is done well, it tends to resonate with people in a positive way.
I love that. Rebrand equals growth, I wrote. Yeah. Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about like free and low cost digital platforms. How do you help your clients get started? Everybody would probably jump to social media, and there's so many different social media platforms. So where do they start? What should they do?
And my background was actually TV and radio. So I was dealing with a lot of clients that had those $5, $10, $15, $20,000 a month budgets for that type of advertising. And most of the small businesses we work with are in their very beginning years. They do not have that kind of money. So it's okay, what can we do to get your name out there without breaking the bank or causing you to go into debt too quickly? So social media is a really good platform. There are two different mechanisms with social media. One is just having that brand represented, having your voice heard, being out there, and that's your own posts on your own social media. But that's not going to grow anything for your business because those are people that are already following you. And so social media advertising is a really great way to very affordably put your message out, because you can target geographically. So where a television commercial is going to air across all million or however many people we have in the Richmond market right now to all of their homes, this is something that you can do in your own zip code. 5 miles out, 10 miles out, you can target exactly who your demographic is. If it's only females, you don't need to advertise to the men. And you can test different types of information to see how people respond. So we really recommend social media advertising. Typically that would be Facebook and Instagram. YouTube would be more something they would be doing on their own. although we can certainly help with that. So that's one. And in those platforms, it's very important to make sure that you're telling stories, that you're sharing testimonials. You can talk about yourself all you want, but other people talking about you is going to have that much more impact. You can start a blog, start a YouTube channel, you can start a podcast. So if you can get yourself on a show like this, where you can be interviewed professionally, that has a whole lot more impact than sitting in your office recording yourself.
And it's so much easier.
It's so much easier. Then email marketing is also great, but you've got to have that list. So the other thing that we tell our new businesses is from the very beginning, collect every card of everybody you meet at every single networking event, anything you do, start that database in an Excel spreadsheet of every person you come in contact with, because that will become a database. The people that are your client already that you can make offers to throughout the year, and then the people that you haven't yet engaged with that you can tell about your company. So email marketing is huge. Again, it is tricky when you're doing it yourself. And that's one of the things we specialize in, because even if your subject isn't worded right, people won't open it. Do you want them to call? Do you want them to go straight into your booked appointments? Really having a very easy way for people to respond. So those are out the gate. Get that social media going, start creating that content, do email marketing if you have a list, or just start building that list. And from the digital angle, that's really the best way to start. And then we can talk later when they get more established about doing things like OTT, which is over the top. We all have smart TVs now. And so when I talked about TV earlier, that's broadcast. But now we can advertise to people through their smart TVs. And that again allows us to control the geography. So we don't have to expand it to the whole market. We can just pick certain zip codes and certain demographics. And if I'm sitting home watching HD and you're a plumber, it really makes sense to have your ad served. This is one of the biggest shifts in advertising in the past 15 years, is that we, as small businesses or as businesses that advertise, used to do either cable or broadcast. And broadcast still has a really big place because it is live news, and live news is never going to be something we don't want. Hopefully, we don't start going to YouTube for our news. But the broadcast channels still have that niche. Cable has really died out. There are very few people that are paying for cable in their homes. And cable used to be the way that you could hit like one side of the river in the Richmond market, at least, or the other, and not pay for the whole thing. But now people don't really have cable. They all have smart TVs, and you can now hire an agency or go directly to a TV station. Everybody offers this now. And it's just a way to buy television based on only hitting smart TVs. And you do it on a cost per thousand basis. So you can decide what your budget is. You could spend $2,000 a month to do this in a certain targeted neighborhood to a certain targeted demographic, and not have to pay the $10, $15, $20,000 a month that you used to pay for broadcast. So it really runs the same way as regular TV advertising. You're sitting at home, you're watching whatever you watch. If you do OTT advertising, you can't specifically pick one channel. It does spread you out based on who you're targeting. So if you're targeting a woman that is 25 to 54 that makes $100,000 a year, you're going to be served in the shows that she watches.
We used to call that runner show, ROS.
That's exactly how OTT is bought.
I worked for MTV Networks, and we did the national advertising.
Wow. Yeah, I was real world all the way, because people don't have cables they're all selling it. The key is to find the best cost per thousand that you can get, because it is expensive. And it is expensive as far as cost per thousand, not as far as investment needed, but also frequency. Because one thing I think a lot of people will relate to is when you are watching that Real Housewives and you see the same commercial 50 times in that 1 hour show, it makes you now not want to deal with that company or brand. You are so sick of it. When it starts to come on, you literally want to scream. So a lot of companies will sell it for cheaper, but they won't have a frequency cap. And now you're going to alienate your audience. So I would say the best advice I could give is find somebody that has a relatively affordable cost per thousand, but that will tell you definitively that they have a frequency cap, and also that they have a time cap, so that your commercials aren't running between midnight and 4 a.m. You want to make sure they're running when people are actually watching that are awake.
Yeah.
Because I tend to fall asleep with the TV off. I would be counted as being someone watching at 1 a.m., but I am snoring at that point. My TV's just on.
We had a network. Nickelodeon was during the day, but Nick at Night was at night. And it was interesting to watch the numbers on Nick at Night actually go up because there were moms who were nursing at night or men taking over feeding the baby or people work shift work. It was a long time before that actually came to be. But you're absolutely right. We also had to have a nice percentage of morning, during the day, prime time, and then evenings, really late evenings. Excellent. The number 3 I have on your tip is prioritize community engagement.
And this is where Grassroots comes in. I always tell the local small businesses that I work with, it really is about grassroots at the beginning, grassroots marketing. And part of that is really getting engaged with the community. And that's maybe finding a nonprofit that aligns with your heart and soul, which is also, it just feels so good. Do things with those nonprofits, sponsor some of their things, get involved in content with them, host events, maybe in their honor, or host an event for something else. I've seen a lot of small businesses doing really well with doing webinars lately. There are platforms like Alignable that are free to join. You might pay a small fee to get into some of the more deeper elements of it, but doing an online seminar or webinar where you're the expert and you're giving information to people that's helpful, that first of all is appreciated, and second of all, it does start branding you as an expert in your field. So those are things you can do for nothing or relatively really inexpensively. And then also cross marketing with somebody that aligns with you. An example of this would be like a fitness studio aligning with a local juice bar and cross promoting together so that they're each supporting one another and it fits and it makes sense. And that's one of the things we can help with, is figuring out who would be a good partner to align with. We can help figure things like that out, but that's a really great way to do it. And then even local influencers. There are a lot of local influencers, people that maybe have been in the market for a long time, that have a big following on social media. Working something out with them where they can help promote you is also a really great way to do it.
We have a client who it was interesting because she's in Florida and her building for her business, she's a nutritionist, damaged during the hurricane. And she was really upset. She was prepared for it, but still she knew she had to find a new place. And she ended up finding a better studio in a strip mall, but there are also other complementary businesses.
I'm in there. My mother-in-law saw one of my videos. She said, I know why you're doing that. It's because that floor is dirty. You need to get that floor clean. You're kicking up dust. So funny. A great example of what you just said is that we work with a primary care physician. We launched his business, built his website, got him into networking, did all the things to help him get going. And then we also work with a medical spa who does hormone replacement therapy and Botox. And now they're getting into the space of women's wellness. And we introduced them, and they have come on and done a podcast with me together where they're both talking about different elements of menopause and how that affects women and different things and that is just, what a great way for them to each promote each other. And there's just tons of relationships out there, if you're thinking about it the right way, that aren't going to cost money, or where you can go in on the cost and share that.
Like you said, I don't know if people always think about that. So it's always good to know there are companies like yours that can help people think through that kind of thing. But I will ask you, you talked about local influencers online. How would you go about finding one if you were a business?
Again, it really comes down, especially in Richmond, to who, and doing a lot of networking, and really the more people you have in your network, the more you're going to find those people. So anyone who maybe is attached to the local Miss Virginia, there's one of our clients that we've worked with I think she won Virginia Fitness. And so she has aligned with some of the local medical spas, and she goes in and gets things done, whether it's lip filler or Botox. If somebody could introduce you to somebody like that and you can start a relationship, there are a lot of fitness people, but really it comes down to looking at Instagram, following people that make sense based on your business and looking for those people that have those big followings. Also, people that are really influential in networking organizations. And that's another lower cost relatively tip, is to join a referral based networking group when you launch a business. But those type of groups can help you figure out, depending on what your business is, it's also different depending on what you do. But finding those people that have really big followings or that have a leadership role in Chamber of Commerce, or maybe run a BNI group, you can really find these people all over the place if you can dig up enough rocks.
You never know who knows someone. So that's why it's always good to ask and get to know some people. I love that. So we're going to wrap up in just a minute, but I want you to tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So we had this little brainstorm a few years ago when I decided to leave corporate and come work with my husband at the agency, which I guess has been going on 3 years now. We were trying to figure out how we were going to make up the deficit of me leaving corporate health insurance. And that combined with this idea that we talked about earlier, where people were really trying to figure out the podcast space, but weren't understanding how to make content that people wanted to actually listen to. We realized that because I had done so much voice work over the years in media, that I could probably tackle this. And I also had started a podcast personally that was more about crime. So I had the kind of basics down on how to do it. And so we thought, if we could provide a platform where our small businesses could get on and brand themselves the professional as the authority in that category, have a conversation that included stories and really a way for people to get to know them and trust them. And then also have this platform for our nonprofits, because we do a lot of work with nonprofits. It's a story that they have to share to get funding, that they have to share to get people emotionally invested. And a podcast is such a great way to do that. So we launched River City Podcast. So it provides that. We can do snippets that can go on social media. We can put the whole podcast on their website. So River City's podcast started, and it's something we usually do about one a week. We really only want to talk to people that have a story, that have something interesting to say, an interesting conversation to be had.
We'll have to check that out. This has been fantastic, Jess. You are a wealth of information. I know that people who are listening are thinking, yes, let me write all those down. We will make sure that we have your contact information in the show notes, but tell people, where's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I think the biggest way to reach out, and then also just to get a sense of us, is to go to our website, which is rivercityconsulting.com. And that way you can learn a little bit about us, about my husband, about our background, about the services we offer. And obviously you can contact us through that as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jess.
Thank you for having me. I think together we can just fix the world, at least from a growing business standpoint. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks for listening to the Six Figure Business Mastery Podcast. If you enjoyed listening to this episode and you are ready to leverage video marketing on all online platforms, or maybe even start your own video podcast, then you need to check out the Done For You and Done With You program at themarketingvaadvantage.com and take your business to the next level.